Я еще раз с большим удовольствием представляю Christu Saredi.
Спасибо, Евгений. Добрый вечер, дамы и господа. That's about all I can say in your language. I have no idea if the volume is okay like this or if I sound too strong or whatever. You will tell me, make signs if something is wrong. My name is Christa Saredi, as Evgeny just told you, and I have worked I'm Swiss. I have worked in promotion and more specifically in negotiating and licensing of rights that are connected to a film, and I have worked for many years in this field. I have also worked at festivals, in production, in financing, and most recently at an international film school. In the field of international distribution, as in most of the other trades of the film business, learning by doing is twice as useful as taking theoretical classes. I have learned everything by doing, and I have developed an introductory lecture to share my experience and my personal analysis of the film business with a broader audience. The lecture is normally followed by a workshop in which participants, generally young producers, authors, and directors, are provided with information, instruments, tools, skills, and strategies that are vital to know and use when they venture into the intermediary market. The organizers of Cinema Fund and Business Square, and more specifically Evgeny, whom I have known for many years, asked me to take part today with my lecture that tries to explain why distribution is such a challenge for all of us who work as independents in the national and international film business. I believe that the organizers are also planning a workshop, and it is therefore possible that I will see and be able to help some of you later this year in a practical session to find your place in this somewhat crazy film business with your individual talents. Please forgive me for reading. I do so because the subject matter is quite complex and the time for the lecture is limited, and also because I have the unfortunate tendency to get lost in too many fine points and details. Before we look at your position in the business of today, I think it is useful to look at the history of film as a business. The investigation on the subject was made from my Western European point of view. However, I do believe that the situation in Russia today is similar to ours, despite the fact that its own history, in particular with respect to creation and distribution of films, was very different during 70 years of the past century. So we look now at the history, the economic history of the film business, or of film as a business. In the late 18th century, consumers enjoyed entertainment mostly in an informal setting. They would see performances by roadside entertainers such as clowns, musicians, fortune tellers, and sword swallowers. Only larger cities had real theaters, which were strictly regulated by local and national rules. The US were first to liberalize the entertainment industry. Great Britain did the same around 1845, and France around 1870. This liberalization allowed entrepreneurs to invest in theaters and led to commercial and standardized entertainment. At the end of the 19th century, workers had more spare time, higher disposable income, better transportation, and the population grew, which resulted in a growing demand for entertainment. Around the turn of the century, the traditional entertainment industry could no longer significantly innovate and rationalize its business. But the emerging film industry was very much able to do so by creating a new form of automated, standardized, and tradable mass entertainment, which nearly destroyed the traditional live entertainment. You all probably know more than I about Edison, the Lumiere brothers, and the Maltese Cross, a device which is still used in filming on celluloid today, and therefore it is not necessary to focus on the technological revolution that took place in that very same era. You will also know that cinema technology developed in several countries at the same time and was universally adopted throughout the Western world, quicker than the steam engine, the railroad, or the steamship. The combined effect of technological innovation and business rationalization meant that the national entertainment markets subsequently developed into an international market. For about the first 10 years of its existence, cinema was mainly a trick and a gadget. By throwing a coin in a machine at fairs, spectators could peek through glasses to see a film. Around the year 1900, the first projections attracted larger audiences. Films became a part of the program in vaudeville and in live theaters, and traveling cinema emerged. This changed as of 1905, when fixed cinemas, the so-called Nickelodeons, with a few hundred seats, were built all over the US. 10 years later, the same happened in Britain and in France. Once these cinemas were established, the industry entered into a new phase by offering feature films. Before 1915, cinema goers saw a succession of several films of 1 to 15 minutes each, such as cartoons, newsreels, small comedies. Later on, going to the cinema meant watching a feature film with a length corresponding to a theater play based on a famous story and featuring stars. Stars that came from the theater, from the live theater. Short films remained only as a side dish. The driving force behind feature films was, what do you think? What can you guess? Money. Cinema owners discovered that they could attract larger audiences and charge more for longer films with a higher quality. As a result, producers started to invest money in feature films. Around 1910, investors were eager to buy shares of companies that had the words motion pictures in their name. However, only a few of these companies survived and became the Hollywood studios. Today, we still know the big six. In the early years, the films were sold to the exhibitor, the cinema owner, who received all the revenues and kept all the profit. Because producers did not get any revenues, they had not much of an incentive to increase quality. As this arrangement was not satisfactory, the system was changed. Films were rented rather than sold outright, and percentage contracts were introduced in order to define the division of profit between the exhibitor, the distributor, and the producer. This evolution in the US took place while Europe was at war. Most European companies could not keep up the fast pace, mainly because it required high investments in production. When a country is at war, money is needed for other purposes. US films, however, were shown all over, and the 20s of the last century marked the hour of birth of the Hollywood studios and their dominant position on the retail market. It is difficult to precisely assess the impact of the invention of sound film in 1927, because it coincided with measures taken in Europe to protect their industries. But it is obvious that silent movie can be shown anywhere, while a French language film does not travel as well. In any case, the emphasis put on international distribution was that it could generate additional income. The film itself had already been made. Without much additional cost, it could help earn back high production costs. After the Second World War, the Hollywood film industry disintegrated. Production, distribution, and exhibition became separate activities and were not always in the hands of the same organization. There were different reasons for this disintegration. The most important, however, the emergence of television, which became a new distribution channel for audiovisual entertainment and thus increased the distribution capacity. Television focused on the lowest common denominator, while radio and cinema started to target their output to more specific market segments. The consequence was a sharp fall in the box office revenue in the decade after World War II. Because they were more flexible and specialized, European production companies were better prepared to adapt to the post-war demand. Several European companies, such as Rank, Gaumont, Polygram, and others, attempted at different stages to re-enter the international film distribution. But even if they made profits during some time, not one of them survived. In the mid-70s, when box office revenues again stabilized, blockbuster movies from Hollywood steadily increased the number of admissions. These films with high production budgets were perceived as high quality and therefore prompted consumers to spend less time in front of their television and to return to the cinema. In the 80s, the variety of films offered to the audience could be increased thanks to the emergence of multiplexes, and as of 1990, after the disintegration of the Soviet Union and its allies, new markets opened in Eastern Europe and also in Asia. Subsequent to the technological innovation, the 80s saw the exploitation of films on video and by cable TV, which, once more, favored the films produced by Hollywood majors. Around this time, the European Union started a large-scale subsidy program of its audiovisual film industry. It is interesting that by 1997, 10 years after the start of the program, a film made in the European Union cost average €500,000, was 70 to 80% state-financed and grossed €800,000 worldwide, reaching an audience of about 150,000. In contrast, the average film produced by an American major cost €15 million, was nearly 100% privately financed, grossed €58 million around the world, and reached 10.5 million admissions. Another interesting difference is that in the 90s of the last century, European broadcasters often co-financed small-scale boutique films, while in the US, the Hollywood studios started to merge with broadcasters and got connected to the entertainment industry, such as video games, theme parks, musicals, and so on. Today, revenues from video games exceed a film's box office. In the future, a feature film may simply be the flagship of a large entertainment supply system consisting of many different formats and markets to exploit the intellectual property rights. I have tried to give you a short introduction of the economic history of the international film industry, in which, from the very beginning, the US and Hollywood played a major role. As much as one should try and would like to look at films created by Hollywood separately from the films created by the rest of the world, you will see that for economic reasons, we have to assess our production by comparing it to films coming from Hollywood. This unfortunate truth is due to the fact that we have to compete against their creation and production on the very same retail market. What is a film? I will not put too much emphasis on the artistic quality of a film. I will try to shed some light on the various aspects of distributing this product to consumers. But first of all, I will briefly try to explain the type of film which is at the center of our attention. This will serve as a basis for our common understanding. A car is a car. Toothpaste is toothpaste. Underwear is underwear. Films are not films. They are hybrids. Sometimes they are even bastards. They are a work of creation and can be measured by their artistic quality. But they are also a product and can therefore be measured by their commercial value or potential. The production cost of films is extremely variable and often in no relation to their artistic quality or to their commercial value. In other words, it is easy to spend a fortune on a film that has no commercial or artistic qualities. The trick is to make films that have these values without costing a fortune or even costing only peanuts. There is an essential difference between producing underwear and producing a film. I may decide to make underwear because I know that consumers in fact will buy underwear. You very often produce your film not without knowing if anybody will ever be interested in buying it. Therefore, producing films is not the same as producing clothes or growing vegetables, because in the case of films, supply does not follow demand. Supply precedes demand. On the other hand, I would not want to say that underwear and films can be dealt with in the same way. We can indeed survive without seeing films. But we surely all agree that films are food for the soul, just like music, literature, and other works of artistic creation. They are not vital, but they are quite essential for our minds and for our souls. For the purpose of this lecture, however, we are considering films as a commercial proposition, as a product that is distributed to the consumers on the retail market. Film is an audiovisual means of expressing form and content. I'm reading a foreign language too. Some filmmakers want to create pure works of art by experimenting with techniques of moving pictures and sound. Others want to tell stories, to inform, to educate, and others just want to entertain. The focus of our attention are, of course, those films which are meant to tell a story to an audience. These can be documentaries that generally depict or interpret the reality of a certain subject or theme. More often, they will be works of fiction, which generally stem from the fantasy and imagination of an author. When it comes to their distribution, the purpose of documentaries and of fiction is to become a product that will attract an audience. The filmmaker's goal with a given film can be a bigger or a smaller audience, a regionally defined or otherwise specific audience. The seller, however, has another goal. He or she will always try to reach the global audience with a film, and we will therefore focus on the film as a tradable product and not as a work of art. Whether a film is a tradable product or not has to do with its commercial potential or, in other words, its capacity to attract an audience. And with the composition of that audience. Is it a broad and general audience, people of all age groups from any social and educational background? Or is it a specific and limited audience, such as people from 15 to 25 with a specific educational background? It is self-evident that the first category has a very much higher commercial potential than the second. To illustrate this, we can look at the examples of the all-time best performances of a feature and of a documentary film in my own country. Switzerland has 7.5 million inhabitants. Almost 2 million spectators went to see Titanic. That was in 1998. And over 350,000 spectators went to see Fahrenheit 9/11, the documentary by Michael Moore. I assume you know it too. Which is, of course, very exceptional, because documentaries normally don't even reach a fraction of 350,000 spectators. I'm talking about Switzerland. But also Titanic is an exception. And the figures, I think, perfectly illustrate the difference between commercial potential. How can a film become a product and compete on the retail market? Before answering this question, we must look at the retail market on which films have to unfold their commercial potential. I open a very brief bracket saying that while new technologies will develop, the structure of the market will change too. Once the film industry, and more importantly, once the consumers around the world are fully digitized, new forms of exploitation will emerge. Films will be watched online, on demand, bought by downloading, and so on. Revenues from these types of exploitation will most likely be accounted for in a similar way as it is today for the classic video and TV exploitation. However, for the time being, we still deal with a market which is more or less divided into the three classic types of exploitation: theatrical, non-theatrical, video, and television. Some films are produced for only one or the other of these markets. A documentary on animals in and around the Amazon, for instance, will probably be financed by and shown on television. Its national and international market can be clearly defined, and therefore its commercial potential can be easily calculated. It gets much more complicated when it comes to fiction, which can be comedies, dramas, children's features, or animation films. These films can theoretically perform well in all three parts of the market, nationally and internationally. Theoretically, however, is the key word, because in practice, around 80% of the films produced all over the world don't make it to the retail market at all. This percentage is much better for films made by the US majors, and often even worse for most other films. If I think of all the films I have viewed and turned down, either because I did not find them sufficiently compelling, or because I did not believe in their commercial potential, and if I think of all the films of my catalogue that could be sold to only a few territories, I sometimes feel that only 1% of the films that are made will ever be seen by more than a handful of spectators. To understand the reason for this depressing ratio, we must remember once again that film and cinema emerged at the end of the 19th century as purely technical innovations, which had no other purpose in the beginning than to surprise and to entertain the audience with moving pictures. Its specific use in all other fields came later, and cinema only eventually turned into the seventh art. The audiovisual techniques lend themselves to very opposite uses, going from information to education, to experimentation or animation, and from conventional to original storytelling. They can be used stupidly or intelligently, and they can become cheap or highbrow entertainment. And there is not one single measure to apply. It's often merely a question of taste, which divides the audience into bigger or smaller groups. This variety of genres makes the task of those who want to create, produce, and distribute films very difficult. Compare it with cars, which are a product that has the same clear purpose for every consumer. It's simply a means of transportation. Although we have to recognize that even this very practical product is increasingly sold by appealing to our emotions, and, most probably, driving a Lada is not half as exciting as roaring through the countryside in a Maserati. The United States of America have understood this fact very well and much earlier than the rest of the world, with the exception of India, who has its very own film industry made to measure for their domestic market. The US has been a melting pot of people from different cultures and with different mentalities. During the Second World War, an army of talented writers and directors from all over the world found a new home there. And they were all willing and very eager to contribute to the development of a young and new culture, the American culture. Their culture is open to everybody, quite easily accessible, and has the big advantage of communicating in English, which, for historical, economic, and political reasons, has meanwhile become the common language of a globalized world. Films produced by the American majors normally have a low common denominator and can therefore appeal to a farmer on a Greek island as well as to a secretary in New York City, a professor in Tokyo, or a stockbroker in Moscow. Because of this historical development, the cultural identity of Hollywood films is, in most cases, not as rough or edgy, or you could say not as pure, as the cultural identity of films from Chile, Sicily, Taiwan, or Tajikistan, for example. I like to compare it with food. Personally, I adore to eat tripe au vin blanc, which basically is cow's gut, a specialty known in Italy, France, and Switzerland, which makes most people vomit. On the other hand, I cannot swallow the famous rotten shark when I'm in Iceland, and therefore I might go to McDonald's, where I'm served a Big Mac with French fries. They are produced according exactly the same recipe all over the world, and therefore always taste the same. You know what you get even before you pay. But when you go to the cinema, you often pay for a journey into the unknown, which can be wonderful or dreadful. You will know only afterwards. The entertainment industry has become the main export of the United States, and the studios have, of course, been very successful in shaping the national and international market to make it fit their products. People all over the world have been, and still are, fascinated by the American culture and its products. And a certain Americanization has taken place in most European countries and on other continents. Therefore, American films are much more attractive than films from any other country. Our films are quite different from theirs, but we are forced to compete on the same retail market. It is like trying to sell onions on a market where the others offer strawberries and cherries. Well, you probably do see my point. There's nothing wrong with fruit, but there are many dishes that would simply be unthinkable without onions. And while the rules of capitalism sign the praise of the free economy and free circulation of goods, and of the choice of conquering the globe, it is more and more difficult to penetrate this market with our films. Up to the late 70s, European countries used protectionist measures to support their own production indirectly. But because of the World Trade Organization, we had to abandon these measures. Since roughly 20 years, the individual countries of Europe and the European Union have become de facto producers of films by subsidizing the creation, production, financing, and partly also the promotion and distribution of films. Unfortunately, the overall results are rather disappointing. The negative WTO, World Trade Organization effect on film distribution could again be observed in the year 2006, when South Korea had to cut the number of days in which local theaters had to show domestic films from 146 to 73 days per year. These cuts came as a result of pressure from the United States to reform South Korea's trade practices before signing the free trade agreement between the two nations. I am convinced that we should defend the Convention on Cultural Diversity, which UNESCO adopted in the year 2007 and was ratified by about 60 countries. We should not be afraid to fight for financial and cultural reasons, since this is exactly what the United States so often does. I have taken some time to talk about the United States of America and its influence on the retail market, because it is crucial to understand that we are all in the same boat when it comes to the problems of penetrating this market. Let's now focus on the question how a film can become a product and compete on the retail market. It is important to know exactly what product you want to create when you develop your idea and before you start writing a script. As a producer, you must be able to assess the appeal of your film for the national and for the international market. These are the only elements that can give you a theoretical hint as to the financial consequences that are so crucial, and they can be an indicator for the chances of a film in international distribution. You cannot really see that so well, so somebody is distributing the page for you to have it. To illustrate the difference between the symbolic or artistic and the commercial values, you see a graphic representation taken from the Rules of Art by Pierre Bourdieu. Bourdieu researched if and how a work of art, and more specifically a literary work, can become a product that generates profit. Of course, the parallels with cinema are not to be found on the level of production, since directors, unlike painters or writers, are generally not their own producers. The parallels, however, are obvious in distribution. Bourdieu argues that a cultural good, in our case an independent art house film, can have two types of values: artistic value, which is difficult to measure, and commercial value, which is not difficult to measure. It's 0, or it's 1 million, or it's 10 millions. It's very clearly measurable, but only afterwards. For an art house film to obtain a commercial value, it must have such artistic value to turn its director into a contemporary classic, as I would call it, which means that hardly ever a new director can make a commercial success, but if he continues to direct films that have a highly perceived artistic value, he has a real chance to turn into a contemporary classic, and he will find he will access the retail market more easily than all the others. There are many individuals who determine the artistic value of a film, and their evaluation is never based on objective and measurable criteria. That's the other problem. Just try to consider why an opinion leader praises a film, or why a critic may destroy it with his reviews. This fact makes turning any artistic product into a commercial proposition an often unsurmountable challenge. I therefore strongly recommend any producer to ask the opinion of specialists in international distribution and to question his project from the very beginning and all along development and production process. However, there are no rules to anything in our business. Intuition, gut feeling, and the continuous self-criticism are probably much more practical and useful instruments when you decide if an idea should be turned into a film or not. It is great if your film turns into a success domestically. This may increase the chances for international distribution, but may is the key word. Ever so often, a film is successful domestically. You understand that's in its home market, but for various reasons, it still does not travel beyond. And unless your home market at home and in some key territories, such as Germany, France, and England, oh, sorry, I skipped a line. And unless your home market is very big, you can hardly recoup the investment. You are in a lucky position in your country because you are definitely capable of recouping your production cost in your own country, unless the film costs extremely, very, very much money. The better the film is received at home and in some key territories, such as Germany, France, and England, the easier it will be to get the attention of other territories and to possibly sell the film around to 50 countries worldwide, which is about the maximum number of sales a film can reach. There are no rules how to turn a film into a tradable product, but through all the years I worked in the business, some tips have crystallized, and I keep on repeating them to anyone who asks me for advice. Think 200 times if you really want to make a film. If you are wise, you should better grow onions or open a factory for underwear instead. Because it is unlikely that you will make this exceptional film which is sold all over the world and performs well on all the markets. Hundreds of producers and directors have tried and failed. Do not greenlight a script development before you have dedicated enough time to properly develop the idea for a film, which should be original, personal, and authentic. Why do you think that Almodovar is so successful? Certainly not because he uses subjects or imitates the style that Hollywood is so successful with. Never try to imitate Hollywood films. The Americans will always be much better at this because they are Americans and we are not. Listen carefully to yourself and to your allies. Take their advice and drop a project which is just not good enough. Produce a compelling, surprising, and brilliantly crafted film in your very own way. Or, to use the comparison with food again, cook spicy, but use your own spices. Keep the film 30 minutes too short rather than 5 minutes too long. And I mean by that a 150-minute film can be too short. But we see so many films that are 20 minutes too long, even with the standard running time of around 90 minutes. This is a very, probably from all the tips, this is the most useful and the most objectively correct, and has also to do, obviously, with the programmation grids of cinemas. And last but not least, be proud of your own culture, be patient, work hard, and hope for the best. We will first look at the intermediary market and then at the retail market where revenue is generated. But before starting, I will distribute a chart which illustrates the revenue change. Art house films, which are also called independent films, must inevitably pass successfully through the intermediary market before they have access to the retail market, which is decisive financially in the end. Other than classical consumption goods, each film is a prototype, a unique product which is traded on a very complex market. The complexity of the film trade can hardly be explained by classical economic theories. The film business clearly acts within a network and faces the somewhat chaotic rules of what is known as the economic network theory. You see a graphical representation of the network, and I will briefly describe some facts about the network theory. The theory explains the crucial empirical fact that every person comes into contact with several other persons. The connections linking all these persons do not form a simple chain or a single star. Instead, if we connect the points that stand for persons by lines, these lines sometimes form closed circuits, but more often they crisscross one another. The resulting pattern looks like an untidy net and is therefore appropriately called a network. Within a network, the relation between the actors is the central instrument. The focus is thus not on the instruments of sale, as within the general economic theories, but on persons who determine the fate of products by their activities. The intermediary market, which we all are part of, is a network with a huge number of individuals who determine the success of a film. These persons can be called mediators or middlemen, but I see them as our allies. Each ally is in touch with hundreds of others who all specialize in one of the many professions within the film industry. Apart from being specialists, these allies must also be good at networking in order to bring your film from the intermediary market to the eventually decisive retail market where income is generated. What is networking? Dealing with films always means dealing with people, temperaments, and mentalities. Authors, directors, and producers must communicate with each other before the production can begin. The shooting of a film requires the cooperation of many more professionals, such as the actors, the director of photography, the set designer, and so on. And all these people will share a common experience that will result in a final product over which they do not individually have any control. Later, when the film is on its way, far away from the caring hands of the production team, you deal with post-production specialists, laboratories, publicists, sales agents, shippers, and many more, who all accompany your baby through the intermediary market to the big cinema screens, the video shops, and the small screens. In other words, they accompany your film on its way to the consumers all over the world. Groundbreaking ideas by the creators are at the beginning of the process. They are the source of the pipeline. But these creative ideas will lead to nothing without all these other individuals involved at all stages. Producers must be capable of opening doors to find money to start with. Communication between those before and behind the camera, cooperation and improvisation are essential while you are shooting a film. And the same goes for all the specialists a film needs on its way to the consumer. Even when you are a very convincing and charming, even when you have an extraordinary project, if you do not manage to find allies and friends and communicate with them, your project will not succeed. Furthermore, I strongly believe that passion is a very important ingredient of our business, and another one is loyalty. When talking about the intermediary market and the retail market, one always will have to deal with dull facts and figures of distribution. But we should never forget that everything is based on a network, on communication and cooperation among many, and that all of these mostly loyal allies share your passion, which is cinema. In all the years working in the business, I have waived my own network. I have built relationships by communicating with thousands of people. I tried to be open to anybody and anything. And I had a lucky strike with a domino effect, which determines the success of my company. Hard work and determination are the basis of everything, but everybody must also be able to grab the luck when it strikes. Contacts, connections, solidarity and loyalty within your own country and within your region, but also beyond it, are the capital of each ally within the network. If you move well and easily within the network, you multiply your chances of actually financing your next project. Networking also means that you have to be generous. You must share your professional, creative, and technological knowledge and your experience in the field of international distribution with your peers. You must give in order to receive. To be part of a functioning network also means to lobby for your cause within your countries. And, oh my God. To be part of a functioning network also means to lobby for your cause within your countries and to make sure that politicians take you seriously. You must show and prove that the film is not only a cultural proposition, but that the film industry can also create employment. As it takes years to become part of the international network, you must make sure to be part of your local and regional network first. If such a network does not yet exist, you should contribute to its creation. The professionals in a country or a region will only stand a chance to become appreciated allies within the international network if they have a strong domestic network that goes from production to consumption. But let's get back to our allies in the intermediary market. Who are these allies in distribution? Who are these professional networkers who handle the commercial life of a film? I will describe in chronological order the participants of the intermediary market. As the term explains, the sales agents are the agents who sell your film, and therefore they are your representative. You will need a sales agent, preferably before you start shooting or during post-production, but at the very latest before your film goes to the first festival. You can also call a sales agent an international distributor. He or she plays a very important role as the mediator between those who create and produce films and those who exploit them by distributing them to the consumers in the different countries. The sales agents work out a strategy to present your film to all your other allies on the globe, and they will also accompany your film during its whole commercial life, which can be very long, but in most cases of the less commercial art house films is not much longer than 3 years. Film festivals, which are cultural exhibitions with an event character. You all know what film festivals are, and you know that most of the film festivals show our so-called independent films, and that it is obvious that meanwhile festivals constitute a parallel market that exists because only very few of these films can penetrate the commercially decisive retail market. Film festivals are an ally within the intermediary market as much as are markets. And you know that a film market will show any film unless it's not older than 3 years because you pay for a projection. The festival in Cannes has attached a market to its cultural event around 1959. Berlin has done so in the mid-70s. Other festivals try similar strategies, but often they do not manage to attract enough sellers or buyers, and therefore they may be important on the domestic or regional level, but not really on an international level. Many festivals, including the most important ones, have meanwhile established so-called co-production markets. In a way, that's what we are attending here too. They all follow the example of Cinemart that was created in 1984 by Hubert Bals, the founder of the Rotterdam Film Festival. These markets were launched in order to facilitate networking, to help you find your allies for new projects at an early stage. Sorry, I'm still with festivals. It is important to study at which festival your film should have its international premiere. Everybody wants to go to Cannes, but Cannes is not right for every film. It is also important to look at the different sections of a festival. A film may pitifully fail to attract a professional's attention within Cannes competition, but turn out to be the most talked about film of the director's fortnight. As there is no rule to anything, the sales agent, who has many years and films of experience, will be most likely to be able to guide you along this very important road. In your strategy, you must take into consideration various aspects connected to both the film and the festival. All of my films were shown at festivals, major ones, bigger ones, and smaller ones. Sometimes you have a good film, a major festival selects it, and things still go wrong. Thus, being invited to the right festival can help, but it offers no guarantee. All festivals compete against each other. The competition between festivals can be quite fierce. Cannes obviously wants to premiere all the new films of famous directors and discover the most promising new directors. But so do Berlin, Venice, and all the others. This sometimes allows for some gambling for good or bad reasons between the sales agent and the festival. A sales agent knows all the directors of the most important festivals. He is in a way his accomplice because the festivals are always eager to be informed about everything that is going on. They all want to be the first place where a new hot director is embraced by the intermediary market for the first time. We have looked at the two main allies working within the intermediary market, the sales agent who positions the film at the festival, and the festivals themselves, which present your film to all the other allies of the intermediary market. There are, of course, more participants within the intermediary market, such as actors and technicians, commissioning editors, bankers, private investors, and representatives of public funds who are all networking for their current and future projects. And we must not forget publicists and journalists who are all our allies too, since they play a significant role as opinion makers within the intermediary market and are decisive multipliers once the film is offered to the consumers on the retail market. To complete this overview of allies within the intermediary market, we must of course mention those who are in charge of the commercial exploitation, which means the domestic distributors and the exhibitors. They are the bridge between the intermediary and the retail market, where films unfold their commercial potential, where income is generated. In order to get the best exposure and the best chances to fully exploit the commercial potential of a film in every country, it is decisive that rights are licensed to the appropriate distributor for theatrical, video, and television exploitation. As I said earlier, technological innovation and evolution will probably change this standard. But today, we keep on still dealing with the three classic types of exploitation. Although we all compete on the same retail market, there is a major difference between distribution of art house independent films and, sorry to say it again, Hollywood films. The US majors have their own distribution network that covers more or less the entire world. From their offices in LA, they dictate the date and the number of prints and determine the campaigns for launching their titles. They then closely monitor the results over the first 2 weekends. If a film does not live up to their expectations, they will simply replace it with the next one on their list. In the case of Switzerland, it makes you really desperate when you look at the weekly figures which show that a fistful of films from the majors take up 350 of the 520 available screens. The majors do not only flood us with their titles, they also release a film with 60 to 130 prints, which of course drastically reduces the variety of films that can be shown. But apart from distributors working for or with the US majors, each country has a number of independent distributors and exhibitors who release independent films. They are the last link of the chain of allies that determine the commercial fate of a film. We now briefly look at how the film reaches its consumers. You probably know that the film business divides the world into territories, not countries. Most often, a territory corresponds to the geographical and political boundaries of a country, but in some cases it does not or goes beyond these boundaries. It's, for instance, you don't sell a film to Luxembourg or to Monaco. These rights go together with the rights of Belgium or France, or the United Kingdom, respectively. Sometimes it works the other way around. You sell rights for English-speaking Canada to the US distributor, and those for French-speaking Canada to the French distributor. In certain territories like Greece, Benelux, Switzerland, France, and Italy, you can have up to 4 or more buyers competing for your film. In others, like the United Kingdom or the United States or South Africa, for instance, you're happy if even one distributor finds the way into your office as a sales agent. You can imagine that the 15 independent distributors, for instance, that we have in Switzerland, have a difficult time to compete against this domination of the majors. If one of their films does reasonably well in a given cinema, it is almost impossible for an independent distributor to convince the exhibitor to book their wonderful art house film, which of course has a smaller commercial potential. The sales agent generates agreements which license the rights to exploit a film theatrically, on video and through TV in a given territory. Such rights are generally granted in one agreement with the theatrical distributor of a given territory. And through this agreement, the producer is indirectly connected with the consumers in each country where the film is released. This agreement formulates in great and clear detail many specific and general conditions which guarantee that the film will be released and how gross income or profit will be divided between producer and distributor. The agreement also specifies what materials must be delivered to the distributor, such as picture and sound elements, and all the promotional elements and legal documents that are needed to launch the film in a territory. I have explained how difficult it is to offer onions on a market where all the others are selling cherries and strawberries. But to really understand the challenge of the retail market, you must know that only 1 in 3 to 10 films allow a distributor to recoup his investment and to make profit. Video distribution faces the same difficulties because consumers prefer to be entertained rather than elevated when they rent or buy a DVD. It is essential that the film is entertaining, full of action, star-driven, which of course puts art house films at a disadvantage again. Up to the mid-90s, the most important deal for any film was to sell it to public TV. This was when public broadcasters were still eager to offer a vast variety of programs to their audiences. In these times, a sale to television would almost grant you to also find a theatrical distributor. Today, public and private broadcasters tend to forget about their task to offer a service to society, and they focus almost exclusively on the results of ratings. They have very limited slots for art house films, and in most cases, they will show them very late at night with a slim chance for high rating. And it is becoming more and more difficult to sell art house films to television. To end this lecture describing the film business, its historical evolution, the cultural and economic implications, and the long-lasting challenges that our network has been and is still facing, I allow myself a brief look at the future of distribution of independent and art house films. The current technological innovations has multiplied the production of films, and for many years already, we have been talking about new ways of distributing them. Many dream of income from exploiting internet, on demand, download, and streaming But to this day, the new media have complicated the exploitation without turning into a source of considerable additional income. I personally have the impression that for the past 20 years, and still now, we have been stuck in a situation similar to the one preceding the introduction of television. I wish that the independents within the international film business will find an intelligent way, based on solidarity, to rise to the challenge of distributing their product via these new media. Unfortunately, I fear that it will be tough and require hard work to make sure that art house films, as we understand them today, will be shown and sold to the consumers all over the world, on the big screens, in theaters, and on the small screens of television, computers, and mobile devices. And this is the end of my lecture, and I apologize that it was not very uplifting, but I have been working in the business for 25 years, and I have tried to explain to you the reality of the market, which you should never forget. And I'm now open for questions that anybody may have. Of course, I would have 1,000 anecdotes or examples to tell to you, but a lecture of 1 hour just doesn't allow to do this. But whoever wants to know something is welcome. Yes.
For the independent film, what would you recommend to be a first step, how to find a sales agent?
When to make the first step, or how to make the first step?
How to make the first step, how to find a sales agent for your future film.
Okay, I think it's a very important duty of a producer to do his homework. Doing your homework means you go to watch films, you see films that you like very much, or that are very similar to the project you're having, or very similar, or have something to do. And you see at the end, normally you see in the catalogs when you're at festivals anyway, but when you go to the cinema, you see it at the end of the film. You see who did the international sales. Nowadays, with the internet, you just go on the sites, you study their catalog. You have to know who the sales agent is. Then the best thing is to hang out at festivals and markets, but not go and knock at their doors, because sales agents are crazy while a festival is going on, because they have the films to sell, so they don't want to hear about the project which is in your mind and going to shoot in a year or two. But hang out at nights, try to get to know them. That's what I mean by networking. Talk to your peers. You will find out suddenly a Georgian producer had the film with that sales agent. Talk with the Georgian producer, get to know him, get information from him, and then you know already who more. You don't know who he is exactly, but you know who you are dealing with. And then at festivals, it's quite easy to have a drink, on the corner of whatever. That's what I mean. Networking is the key. This is your capital. You have to talk with people and to exchange information so that you have the right person here who tells you, by the way, look, that's the Saredi world sales person. And then you find a charming way to attract the attention of the person, and then you start nicely. I've seen so many films that you have sold. I'm eager to get to know you. It would be, do you have a minute now or whatever? And then you will see. And then you exchange business cards. And then you do your job and you go home at night and you put down, I met Christa on the 25th of June, blah, 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 blah. She told me that she loves that film that we just both saw before. And in a year when you call her, you will say, you probably don't remember me. But last year in Moscow, we talked briefly. I'm now ready with my project. Would you be willing to see it? That's the charming way, the easy way for both sides to start working together. Now, this is not always possible, of course. So then you use all your other network allies that you have, and you send to Christa a mail saying, I don't know, a good friend of, and that's the producer of a film in my catalog, or the director. I have the feeling that I'm currently developing an idea that might be of interest to you. Do you prefer to, can I send you something? Do you prefer to receive it by post or by email? Please do this favor to the sales agent, or to anybody, to a co-producer too. Always ask, do you prefer to receive it in which language? By post, print it out, or can I email it, or whatever? And then things go on, because of course sales agents are interested in finding new talent, because they are then the ones who try to bring it to this intermediary market and who will be able to help you to get out a good strategy.
Хотелось бы узнать какие-то особенности дистрибуции.
I'm sorry, I did a lousy job. I did not prepare for translation, so. Is channel 2 is English?
Я хотел спросить о какой-то особенности дистрибуции короткометражных фильмов, которые, может быть, вы можете поделиться опытом.
Do you know a special way of distribution of short films?
As I said when I talked about the historic evolution, nowadays short films are just a side dish. There is no market. I say there is no market. It's not true. There are short film distribution companies. Just go on the net, you will find them. But a sales agent will rarely take a film up in his catalog to sell it, because it's very little money to be made there, and you're better off to get the money yourselves. The one short films I could sell in all instances were short films made by directors who are already known. Like when Jarmusch came up with the idea to do the coffee and cigarettes, it was an easy sell. Everybody wanted his films. But that's not the good advice. So the issue is that a short film mostly is, I call it like it's a business card for you as a director, or as a writer, or as a DP. But you should not expect a short film to have a commercial life. Did that answer your question? Well, maybe there are no questions because I have answered them all. But I don't know exactly who is sitting in front of me. I just would like to really... Yeah, please. Oh, I thought you had... No, sorry. I would like to encourage you in Russia to really not only think about producing, but to really think about distributing your films. Distributing them to an audience, to a general audience, to your, hopefully, your domestic audience. You had such a great situation. Well, on that level, in the 70 years of a system that was not so great. But I mean, I think you should try to think of how it worked then and what you can use of these times to make sure that your home market is not crumbling for your own films, for the films you want to produce. Russian?
Who's first?
No, I can ask a question in English.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe I missed this part. Can you say maybe a few words about distribution as the part of financing project? Like when you're getting money from distributor in the moment when you're just putting money together before filming?
Yes, it is all possible, but there are no rules. The rule, I hope I made it clear in my lecture to you, the rule is to be within a network, then you have a chance. Because what you need is somebody who knows which distributor in Italy or in France or in Japan or wherever is likely to be interested in your product, because otherwise you can theoretically send your script to everybody and tell them I would like to be co-produced by you, but everybody does this. You have to have an introduction, and an introduction to a source that should bring you money has to be personal. This is why I'm insisting on networking, finding your allies, knowing the person who knows where to submit a script. Now set this, don't have illusions, unless you have already proved your talent through films that are known in the intermediary market. Your chances to be pre-sold, as we say in this case, on the basis of a script to a distributor in France or in England or wherever, are very slim.
Christa, thank you so much for your lecture, for sharing your great experience, and you partly answered on my question, but how can you characterize the Russian market?
I don't know. I just have the feeling. I went to the internet. I tried to prepare myself a little bit. And I have the feeling you are in the same situation as the rest of the world is, except that by the, the relationship between the number of 140 million of Russians, right? And the number of cinemas is despairing, no? It's like lousy. You should be sort of like, as a producer in Russia, I would start, the first thing is to set up a network of distribution. Because you have to, unless you just want to produce works of art or of experimentation where you know that you have 5 people who are interested in your film. You know what I mean? To exaggerate it. I hope you all want to produce films that are seen by many people. And this is where I think that maybe you have still a lot of work in Russia, which is political work, which is trying to fight for protectionist measures like the Koreans had, to make sure that your own films and the independent films from the rest of the world can be shown in your own country. You have to sustain a market, because otherwise I don't understand why you want to produce. So I have the feeling you are maybe still in a good position. I don't know how heavy the majors have already made their market here to their measure. It's probably easier for you to judge yourselves. So I can't really qualify it because I don't know it well enough, but I remember my times, but that's long ago, that I had problems to sell my films to Russia, although they were contemporary classics. And distributors always complained that it is very hard for them to show their films. And I think it is still more or less the same. I don't know. So fight for your cause in your country. Thank you for having listened me out, and I wish all of you the best of luck, and stick together, be solidary, and do something about the market.